So one of the things that's been exercising my mind over the last 2 or 3 years is, I suppose you could call it revisionist history. We've been fed this line that all of history is a lie. And I don't dispute that much of history is a lie, but that's not the same as all of history being a lie. And last week I was on holiday, and what I realised when I was on holiday is that you can tell an awful lot about history, what really happened, from architecture. So what I'm going to do next is show you some video that I took on the Greek island of Kos. And this isn't holiday snaps or anything like this. Especially towards the end of the video, there's going to be some pretty hard-hitting bits of history that I'm sure even many of my viewers are completely unaware of. So let's start off with something mild. Kos, where I went to, was part of Italy, and it became part of Italy after this war that the Italians and the Turks had in 1912, something that I was unaware of. So Kos was, I knew about the Ottoman Empire being there, but in the 1920s and 30s, the Italians did a lot of infrastructure building on Kos, and much of the buildings that you can see in these videos are absolutely beautifully designed. And a lot of it came about as a result of an earthquake that happened in 1933. And this Italian architect came in, Rodolfo Petracchio, and he drew up a new city plan, transforming the old city into almost like a showcase of rationalist architecture. I'm not an expert, but to my mind, it looks like there's almost like you can tell it's 1920s, reminiscent for me of Art Deco. Now, during World War II, Kos was obviously initially occupied by the Italians, still under Italian control. And it stayed that way until the Italians changed sides in 1943, when they switched to being part of the Axis powers to, supporting the British, Americans and the Russians. And at the time, the Italians and the Greeks were on Kos, were pretty happy about that. Obviously, the Germans weren't so happy, and on the 3rd of October 1943, the Germans, led by this guy Muller, Frederick Wilhelm Muller, they began Operation Polar Bear by landing in 3 different locations on Kos. And there was also an airborne assault too. And the main landings took place at Marmaris and Tigaki, which are both holiday resorts. So I've got some video that shows you that. What's also interesting too is that you can see remnants of Italian bunkers that were built prior to this German invasion. And they look very different to the type of bunkers that you'll see on the Atlantic Wall. To this day, about 600 meters east of Marmaris, there's the remains of a German landing ship called the Lecce that was sunk on the 20th of October 1943 by a British motor torpedo boat 307. And the German boat was one of the landing craft that was initially built and designed by the Germans for transport of troops across the pass to Calais to England during their planned Operation Sea Line, their planned assault on the UK that obviously never went ahead in the end. Now, at the time, the Germans were using this boat to channel ammunition from Kos to Kalymnos and Leros, beginning the journeys from Marmaris, where this boat used to spend the night, and they tried to kind of hide it away. But as I say, on the 20th of October, they'd got loads of fuel and ammunition close to the shore, had the Germans, and it was all ready to be transported the next morning. And apparently the night was clear, and there was plenty of moonlight. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, three of these British motor torpedo boats appeared out of Kalymnos, and they saw the shape of these boats on the Marmara coast, the German ones, and they fired a couple of torpedoes at them. The first one missed its target and skidded on shore and hit the ammunition and fuel dump, which turned night into day. The other torpedo hit the another one of these craft on the bow at the front of the ship, and basically it sank, and that's what you can still see now. So basically, there was some British soldiers on the island who came over to try to help the Italians repel the German attack. And although they outnumbered the Germans, they ended up losing. And basically, what then happened was an awful lot of trouble for the Italian soldiers that had fought alongside the British, trying to fight against their former German allies. So this German guy, this Muller, had these Italian soldiers tried, and 148 of the officers were deemed to be guilty of like, I don't know, war crime or something. The Germans didn't like them switching sides, so the Germans gave the Italian officers a chance to switch back to the Germans, and 133 of these Italians said no, and the Germans shot them by this salt lake, which I'm going to show you now in the video. In February 1945, 66 of these bodies were found and transported and moved to a mass grave in the Catholic cemetery of Kos, which you can still see now. So if you actually kind of go there, and you can kind of like wonder, well, what are all these Italian people doing now? Are these Italian soldiers? Well, that's why they're there. At the end of the war, the German general, this Muller, who gave the order to shoot the Italians, stood trial, and he was executed by firing squad in Athens on the 20th of May, 1947. And, what this shows, I guess, is that it's not always the case that these people get away with crimes against humanity. So that's something to consider, about the people that took part in the biomedical fascism and ended up deleting the fellow human beings fairly recently. These people aren't out of the woods. Justice could come knocking on their door at some point in the future. Now on to some of the more if that isn't controversial, this really is. So there'd always been Jews living on the island of Kos prior to World War II, about 30 families all in all, and they built a synagogue. Now everything was okay whilst the Italians were on the island. They didn't persecute the Jews, even though they were part of the Axis with National Socialist Germany. But once the Germans took over the island of Kos, things started to go badly wrong for the Jews. And on the 23rd of July 1944, all the Jews on Kos were assembled at gunpoint, along with all their possessions, in Lotsia Square, which is still there in the centre of Kos town. And the Germans, they did what they normally did, they confiscated all of their assets. This is an example of, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Socialists believe in that, don't they? That it's okay to steal other people's assets so it can be redistributed to other people. That stuff still goes on today, and people think it's okay when it's not. Stealing at the point of gunpoint, at the point of a gun, is wrong, even if it's currently considered legal, as it was back under during the Second World War under the German National Socialists. So it wasn't just the Jews of Kos that were deported at that time. It was also the Jewish population of Rhodes and this other island called Leros. And all in all, there were 200 Jews put on the boat at Kos and more at these other islands. And they were sent to Athens on 2 coal barges without any food or water. And the barges, basically they ended up stopping at another island. They actually had to do a bit of a detour to this place called Leros to deport a single Jewish man who'd lived on the island. And that just shows you that this was kind of all ideologically motivated, that this one Jew, they wanted to get rid of him on Leros, even if it meant, I don't know, something like a 60-kilometre detour for them. They were that keen on eliminating the Jewish population of this part of the world. And then upon arriving in Athens, the Jews were detained at the infamous Haidari camp, and from there they were deported on to Auschwitz. So today you'll still see there's the synagogue. It still exists, but it's not in Kos Town. And I took some photographs of it, and you can see that from memory there's like a plaque on the door, and it basically says that this is like commemorating that Jews lived on Kos from the 16th century right up to 1944. And there's also evidence of the Jewish, like the cemetery that existed on Kos, and you can still see the gravestones that were smashed up by the Nazis. So for all of these people that they explicitly want to say that the Germans never mass murdered the Jewish population, or there was some of them are even crazy in that they incorrectly argue that there was no Jews living in Europe prior to World War II. The Holocaust, it just never happened. These nutters, what they need to do is go and visit some places and open your eyes, because you can still see, even today, architectural evidence of the Holocaust, what happened in Europe in the 1940s. Why does this matter? Well, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? In that if you say that these things never happened, then some of these people are crazy. They actually want some sort of they object to Klaus Schwab, but their solution is just another type of ethno-nationalist technocracy. This is what these guys want. Forced deportation of various people that they don't like, who are currently living in places like Britain. And if we're not careful, we're going to get an awful lot of bloodshed, because these people will not go quietly. And it's also immoral to do these things. Genocide is immoral. What's the solution? Of course, yet again, just need to explain this again, is a dramatic removal of the size and the power of the state. People should be allowed to live where they want to live. What is immoral is welfare benefits, state education, state healthcare, all financed by extortion, backed up by violence or the threat of violence, which is basically what taxation is. So that's all I want to say today. So God bless.